Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Luke James, not the singer. If you want some promo or your music reviewed, you can hit up Luke at redmattersite.com. That's S-I-T-E. And you can also send any questions there if you want some advice or want to hear my opinion on any particular topic. That's actually what we're going to do with this podcast episode here. It's a little bit of a 20K subscriber special, and you guys have sent in some great questions, so I can't wait to talk about them. And you also want to make sure that you check me out on Twitter and IG at LukeJamesBGN and on Facebook.com/LukeJamesReviews, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you happen to be listening to this somewhere else. I did put this up on SoundCloud, so if you're listening on YouTube, you can also find me there, soundcloud.com/LukeJamesBGN. But we are going to jump right into these questions. Thank you so much for sending them in. This is something that I just like to do once in a while, and it's been a while since I've done it. So we're going to start off right from this question with Brandon. And this one I found to be very interesting because it's really outside of the usual stuff I talk about, which is music and, sometimes video games, other stuff like that. He asks, one thing that I would love to get your opinion on is the hypocrisy of parents, the ones that have the do as I say, not as I do attitude toward their kids. For example, a parent doesn't want their kid to watch movies, play video games, or listen to music that has explicit content, but they still use profanity around their kids constantly, and then when their kids call their parents out on it, they just tell the kid that they're grown and they can say and do what they want. So the wording here, I've just taken these questions word for word. This one's a bit all over the place, but I do get what he's getting at. And I do think this is a bit of a tricky one because personally, just speaking myself as a father, I think it's very important to set the best example that you can as a parent, but it is also hypocritical to want your kids to be one way while you're wilding out here and acting another way. That's how you get your kids to just be questioning you, like, you're telling me to do this shit, but look at what you're doing, man. You don't even have your shit together. You want me to get mine together? So, you don't want to play that game and get into all that. And yet, at the same time, there are obviously some things that are very obviously not for kids. Like I can sit here blasting NWA while pounding beers and watching the uncut version of Jason Goes to Hell, which is just nasty as hell. But just because I can do that, that doesn't mean I'm about to let my young-ass kids do the same thing, because that's not how life works. Might not be fair, but that's just how it is until you're an adult and or living on your own. So that's how I feel about that topic. I do appreciate it because I am a parent, and I don't get to speak on parenting too often, but, took this opportunity. And next up, we have a question from Drew, who asks me, when did you get into music? So I've been into music pretty much as long as I can remember, because growing up, my older siblings listened to all the stuff that was popular in the 80s and 90s, so some of that stuff is still a bit of a guilty pleasure for me, you know what I mean? I recognize the songs, I know the words whether I want to or not. But then when Crisscross first came out, that's when I really started to get an interest and love for hip-hop, especially since they were young kids who were doing it, so that made me relate to it on a whole other level. I can actually remember going to school with braids in my hair and my clothes on backwards, knowing all the words to almost every song on Totally Crossed Out, although now I don't really remember too much shit from that. So back in the early 90s is really when I got into music. That was a time where I actually got into all kinds of stuff like Wu-Tang, Snoop, Outkast, Warren G, Tupac, and beyond, just to name a couple of people. And I did actually go into this topic a little bit with Granddad Wooly on the last episode of the podcast. If you want to check that out, make sure you do, because we are reminiscing on the good old days of buying CDs, making mixtapes, using Napster, and all that good stuff. The next question we have comes from Josh, and he says, I just hit you up on the comment section of the Kamikaze video, and I saw that you said that your channel growth had kind of slowed down a bit. So what do you attribute that to? Is the online music review just not a niche that's growing, or is it niche? Man, I see that word and I say it the wrong way every damn time. I'm pretty sure it's niche, but for some reason I say niche. I don't know if I'm thinking of Friedrich Nietzsche or what, but anyway, is the online music review just not a niche that's growing? I'd like to know your thoughts on the playing field, especially with myself being a small creator. So, where this is an older question, obviously this was dropped back when I did the Kamikaze review, but regardless, I still wanted to make sure I answered it because it is fun to talk about running a channel. So, I can't speak for everybody's channel. Everybody has a different background, a different fan base, and the way that they've built up. But for me personally, I just noticed that my channel started to slow down when I started to slow down. When I was single without kids, I had all the time in the world so I could get reviews up very quickly. Sometimes I even got 2 or 3 up a day. And I think that quickness and consistency is a pretty big factor when running a channel because so many people are doing reviews and reactions these days. It's just very easy to get lost in the mix. But if people know that you're very consistent and you're putting stuff up in a, very reasonable time, they're definitely going to be coming back for more. You're going to show up more in searches when you get stuff up very quickly. And I think that's what makes it harder if you're a new reviewer starting out, because the reaction channels have really come to the forefront. With the reactions, you're getting videos that are going up very quickly, sometimes like, within a couple hours after a project drops, sometimes within half an hour or so after a track drops. And these people are obviously getting quick hits because people are searching for the songs or the video or album, whatever the case may be, and they're finding that. So that's actually how I found my channel was growing the fast back in the day, because I was doing a lot of that, not so much reactions, but when a song dropped, I'd make a quick track review, and that would always get up there. You can even see some of my most popular reviews or track reviews for Kendrick and beyond. So, you can make it in the review game. It's still very workable as long as you connect with your audience and work hard. I mean, there are plenty of strong review channels still going, but I do think it's a bit of a steeper climb now for anyone starting. There's just so many people out there doing it, and I do think the reaction thing has really become much more popular because, generally speaking, they're quicker, they're more entertaining than just watching someone speak on a review. Not everybody's into that. But hey, I mean, there's no excuses. You want to do what you got to do. You got to keep working at it and work hard. And that's kind of how I feel about it. So it's different for everybody. But you know what? Just be true to yourself. Have fun with it. Keep it real. And I think people will connect with you. So that's all I got to say about that. Now, Shinoda asks, what rapper do you think has the most underrated discography? In his opinion, he says he thinks Rick Ross, Exhibit, T.I., Joe Budden, Hobson, and 50 Cent have underrated discographies. Feel free to discuss that in the comment section, or you know what? You can even answer some of these questions that people are asking me in the comment section if you want. Like if you want to list some of your most underrated projects, your most underrated discographies, I should say, feel free to do that. But in my opinion, I'm going to give you a couple. I think Ghostface has got to be up there because he's been consistent and even experimental over his time in the game. He's definitely taken some chances and he doesn't keep it boring. Ludacris, for some reason, regularly seems to get disrespected. I always see people saying his music is outdated and he's cheesy and all this. But if you go back and check out his albums, they are loaded with bangers, hits, great hooks, great features, great production. I think his discography is definitely underrated, and I got love for him. So, I got to represent for Luda. We got Scarface. He's an OG who just generally doesn't get the love and recognition he deserves, in my opinion. I think he's got a lot of great projects in there, and he's been at it for a long time. And of course, I'm going to round things out with Zero, because he's been out here delivering quality music for a long-ass time as well. He's like 20 years in the game, and whether these artist discographies are truly underrated in the sense that we're talking about could certainly be debated, especially Ghostface, because in general I think he's quite respected, but these are just a couple of artists who I think have given us great music over a long period of time, and we should be talking about how great their discographies are. So take it for what it is. That's my damn answer. Up next, Connor asks, do you think that even though rappers are releasing so much music, the majority of them are subpar, would you prefer hip-hop releases to be less regular, but with a higher quality? And I definitely think quantity over quality seems to be the name of the game these days. Not only are artists dropping crazy amounts of projects, they're also dropping these long projects. They're not really taking too many chances in a lot of instances. So when you get these boring, generic, overstuffed projects, it's kind of boring. As an old head, I do miss that thrill of when you get a single here and there. You'd have to wait a bit for shit to build up. Then you got the album and it felt like it was a bit more higher quality and a bit more polished than just some random shit that was thrown at you. But that's not how the game is anymore, man. This shit has changed. Again, me and Granddad actually talked about this on the last podcast episode. But at the end of the day, I just want great music. It's just very hard to be excited when an artist floods the game because you don't get to miss them. I like when an artist drops a project, you can tell they put a lot of work into it. They kind of disappear for a while. They might pop up here and there. I'll use Kendrick as an example because he does this type of thing. I just prefer that, but you know what? The game has changed. It's all about those streams and staying out there. So I understand what artists are doing. Up next, P.O. asks, do you think the Celtics have a nice shot to make the finals? And can you rank Drake's albums? So as far as ranking Drake's albums, I've actually had that as an idea for a podcast for a while. A lot of people have been asking that. So rather than doing that in this little episode here, I'm going to go really in depth in another episode. So I apologize for not answering it here, but it will be worth it because hopefully it might even be the next episode, man. I got to get to work on the next one after this. So I'm going to try to get to that very soon. I'll be ranking Drake's albums and just speaking on them. So that's going to come up. But as for the Celtics, they have looked pretty damn bad so far this season. But for some reason, I still have hope that they can turn it around. That's just kind of how the Celtics are. Sometimes they start off a little bit sloppy. Sometimes it takes some time to get going, whatever. I think they might be able to slow things down and work it out in the playoffs. At least I hope so, because they got a great roster. You look at them on paper, it looks like they have the talent where they should be leading the East, but they're not. I think right now they're like 10-10. Forgive me, it's something like that if I'm wrong. But, yeah, it's definitely been pretty rough for the Celtics. As a Celtics fan, I'm disappointed. As an Eagles fan, I've been a bit disappointed this year as well, although they did beat the Giants. Not that that's anything to get crazy about, but hey, they're still in the race, so we'll have to see what happens. Piper asks me, do you have a top 10 list of PS4 games? And the funny thing is, I can't even give you 10 PS4 games, because over the years, I've probably been playing my 3DS more than anything else. That's my little RPG, baby. I'm always coming back to that. I'm playing it still, although I did just order a Switch, so I'm sure I'll be, doing a lot of gaming on that. But the PS4, there have been games that I'd buy. I love them. I play them for months at a time, but I don't buy PS4 games quite on the regular. But some of the ones that would be my favorites on there are Mortal Kombat X, God of War, Skyrim, Persona 5, and Fallout 4. I put tons of hours into all of these games and would still come back to them for more, and I'm actually already on a second playthrough of Persona 5 with the New Game Plus option, so that kind of shows you how I feel about that. I've been thinking of getting back into Fallout 4 a bit, just because I'm not going to bother with Fallout 76, but 4 was pretty good, so I could fuck with that, and, we'll see what happens. Just, these are some of the games I really like on PS4. Definitely don't have 10, unfortunately, so apologize for that. Another gaming question here comes in from Thrader. He says, I've noticed that you seem to be a Final Fantasy fan, but have you played any of the games after 9? And if so, what are your thoughts? Now, the only one I've played after 9, and 9, by the way, I think is a little bit underrated. The only one I played after that is the original Final Fantasy Online, which I believe was considered Final Fantasy 11. I put crazy hours into that thing. Like, out of all the MMORPGs I played, that's the one that had me logging hours and hours at a time. And I really enjoyed it. It was definitely extremely grind-heavy and difficult when it first came out, although they did make it a little bit easier and less time-consuming. But during the time that I was playing, man, I maxed my shit out. Level 75 Red Mage, I had all kinds of sub-jobs. I used to sub Ninja so I could tank. I had Black Mage, White Mage sub. This might mean nothing to you if you don't play these games or know what I'm talking about. But if you do know, if you know, you know, as they say. So, I played that shit heavy, and I loved it, man. It was great. Definitely probably the MMORPG that I put the most amount of time in, and I don't see myself going back to it. I don't really have the time for that anymore now that I got kids, but there were definitely some gaming sessions where I got up on my day off at like 9 or 10 in the morning and played that shit until like 2 or 3 in the morning if I got going. I mean, I had some breaks here and there, don't get me wrong. I still had a life, I still got out there, I had a girlfriend and did all those things, but once in a while, man, I had some pretty intense gaming sessions where I wasn't doing much else. So other than that, I haven't played any of the other ones, but we'll see what happens. Technology TV comes in with the next question, and he asks, what are your opinions on Linkin Park's rapper Mike Shinoda, as far as it comes to, his bars, flows, delivery style, etc., etc.? I actually don't have too big of an opinion on him because I was never big into Linkin Park, but he can definitely spit. In particular, I remember him killing it on that song with the Executioners called It's Going Down, but that was a long time ago, and I don't really know where he's at now. He's had verses, I know that. There was another song, what was that one? I think it was him, and was it like Busta Rhymes? They said we won't make it, and na. God damn, what is it called? I'm not going to remember. I'm here in the podcast trying to guess some shit. I remember Chamillionaire did a remix of it, and it was really dope. I don't know, but that's just my opinion on it, man. He's all right. He's pretty good, I guess. I haven't really heard enough from him to give you a great detailed answer, but definitely wouldn't say he's bad, so there is that. The next question comes to us from Chase, who asks, what is your favorite genre besides hip-hop and your all-time favorite artist of that genre? I'd say my other favorite genre has probably got to be R&B, although I do like my funk, soul, and some other stuff, but I'm going to give you 2 albums in particular that really got me into R&B. Case's album Personal Conversation and Drew Hill's Enter the Dragon. I remember my sister had those 2 CDs back in the day. I always had a big CD collection, and so did she, so we'd swap and trade and dig through each other's albums once in a while. I remember one day I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to check out some of this R&B shit and see how I feel about it. I would have only been back when these albums dropped, maybe 14, 15, 16, something like that. But anyway, I really liked them, liked the production. That really got me more into R&B, although I had already liked some R&B because a lot of my hip-hop albums had R&B guest features and such, but those were 2 albums that I really liked. Not sure if I have all-time favorite R&B artists. Like, I kind of just put on playlists once in a while, come back to some of my favorite CDs, but I don't really stand for any particular R&B artist, as they say. So, I'll just give you those couple of albums because I think they're really dope. And speaking of albums, Brandon Hunt asks me, what are your top 5 albums from No Limit Records and Cash Money Records? And he also asked me, what was your parents' reaction when they found out that you liked rap music? So to answer that second question, like a lot of parents, my parents didn't really like the content and swear words, but they did grow to accept it over time as long as I wasn't being ignorant with it, you know what I mean? Like as long as Grammy and Grandpa weren't hanging out in the kitchen and I'm there blasting some niggas, dicks, and bitches type of music, you know what I mean? They don't need to hear all that language and hear some crazy shit like me blasting Devin the Dude or something like that. Exhibit, fucking you right when the family reunion's going on. So, you know, they never really liked rap, but as long as I had it in my room or whatever, what were they going to say? I mean, that was my music, so they kind of grew to accept it, but definitely didn't like it. As for my top 5 No Limit albums, man, whew, you have no idea the Pandora's box that you open with this question, because I was a big No Limit fan and a big Cash Money fan, despite a lot of people hating all that shit back in the day. So it was hard for me to pick 5 that are, you know, that I would say are the all-time best, but here are 5 No Limit albums that I really like. You got Snoop, The Last Meal. I think that is just one of Snoop's best albums. I don't know how other people feel about it generally, but I love that album. There's lots of great production, hooks, really going back to that West Coast gangster shit on that one. That was great. Street Life from Fiend, I think is just one of the most underrated rap albums in general. A lot of people talk about No Limit like they don't have lyrics, but if you listen to Fiend's music or Mac's music, you're definitely going to get some bars, and that's a good album. Master P's Ice Cream Man, that one I always liked because Master P had that Bay Area sound going on as far as the production goes. I just think his rapping was a bit better back then. And even the other album I'm going to throw in here is Silk's first album, The Shocker. And I know, Silk the Shocker is pretty much the person we always make fun of and come to when we're talking about bad flows. But on that album, his flow actually wasn't that bad all the time, man. He held it together a bit better. There's tons of great production on there and hook work. I don't know, man. Maybe it's just a nostalgia, but I always liked that album. And my 5th favorite would be Bossolini from C Murder. I almost went with Life After Death, but I do think Bossolini was a bit more varied and polished, so that was a great album. Tons of great tracks on there, and C Murder definitely has a couple of great albums, man. I was a No Limit fan back in the day, collecting all those CDs with the cool plastic cases. They always kind of stuck out. It was like you're digging through treasure and you find those. They just caught your eye, so, you know, No Limit has some great records. And it's the same with Cash Money, so for my 5 there, I'm going to go with Juvenile's 400 Degrees. This is just a Southern classic in my opinion. Back that ass up. Ha, Flossin' Season, Follow Me Now. There's so many great tracks on that. Hot Boys Guerrilla Warfare, that shit too. I love the production on it. As far as production goes, that's probably my favorite Cash Money project, just with the beats, although the bars are pretty good on there too. You're getting some nice wordplay, getting all 4 of the Hot Boys playing off each other, so that was dope. Then we got Lil Wayne, The Carter 2. Simply put, I think this is Lil Wayne's best project and definitely the best in the Carter series. And then I'm going to go with Big Timers, I Got That Work, man. I think that's 5, is it? Juvenile, Hot Boys, Lil Wayne, Big Timers, I Got That Work. I got to throw one more in here. Let's go with BG's Chopper City in the Ghetto. That was the one that kind of started it all for a lot of people because we all remember Bling Bling, which, you know, that was probably actually the worst song on the album. There were actually a lot of great tracks on there, so these are some of the Cash Money albums I liked. There are some other ones, and you know what? No Limit and Cash Money gets my respect. I know it's easy to take shots at them. Excuse the mouse clicks back here, by the way, because I'm scrolling down through my list of notes you guys sent in. The questions you sent in, I should say. But yeah, No Limit and Cash Money. I fuck with them, man. They got some good music. And if you want to know some good albums to check out, man, I'll show you. They got some bars if you really know where to look. Up next, we have Christopher Mezzador. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't know if it's Mezzador. Do you think that hip-hop is ready to embrace gay artists? I think it is because the world in general is moving forward, and we do already have some gay artists out there like Sid and Young M.A. who are doing their thing. I think the hip-hop world has evolved quite a bit as well, like especially compared to the 90s when that shit wouldn't fly at all. But of course, you're always going to have people who are going to be ignorant and just have a big problem with it. Personally, kind of like I was saying earlier when I was talking about the amount of music that artists put out, I just want dope music. I don't care if you're gay, straight, trans, bi, or whatever. Just make dope music, and that's really all I'm looking for. I mean, I've reviewed some different artists. I'm pretty sure, I know I've reviewed a couple of trans artists. I think I've reviewed some gay artists and bi artists as well. So, you know, the movement's happening, man. There is some music out there from people. You can find it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just make good music. That's what it's all about. Up next, Aaron Walls. What do you think about that new Black Eyed Peas album, Masters of the Sun Volume 1? This one I actually only gave a quick skim to, so I don't have a full review or anything like that, but I thought it sounded pretty decent. I mean, they went back to their roots with that more traditional sound that they had when they first started out, before they got Fergie and started making all that electronic dancey dance shit. So, I thought this was a pretty cool album. That Vibrations Part 1 and 2 was one of the tracks that stuck out to me as I was checking it out, but I don't have a full review for you here. So, I've heard good things about that album, though, so maybe I should definitely try to get that into the rundown or something like that. Up next, Kosovo asks, gaming question. What are some of the most time-consuming games you have ever played? And I gotta say, it's some of my favorite RPGs. Some of those games I already mentioned earlier when I was talking about my favorite PS4 games. So Fallout 4, Skyrim, and Persona 5 all come to mind because I put 100 plus hours in all of those. And I want to show love to Rune Factory 4 on 3DS and the Shin Megami Tensei games, especially number 4 and Apocalypse, where you can easily put hundreds of hours in. So when it comes to my RPGs, I like to put a lot of time in. I don't like to just fuck around and rush through the game. I like to grind levels. If there's any sort of collection thing, like in Pokemon where you collect Pokemon, or, the Shin Megami and Persona games where you collect demons, I like to do as good as I can. I don't go crazy. Like, I don't have to collect every single thing, but I do like to get some of the higher level ones and mess around. So those are the ones that I would say are the most time consuming. And that damn Final Fantasy Online, man. I don't even know how many hours I put to that, how many days, how many months, but that shit was ridiculous because I was playing that all the time. So those are some of my answers there. And he also has a hip-hop question. Which hip-hop albums/songs introduced you to the genre? And I did actually touch on this a little bit earlier with one of the other questions where I was saying Warren G, Wu-Tang, Snoop, Criss Cross, Spice One, Tupac, Outkast, Naughty by Nature. These are just some of the artists who really reached me at a young age and made me fall in love with hip-hop. But right now, I think it's time to take a quick break. This has gone on for a little while. We'll put a little breaky break here. Maybe you guys want a break so you can pause it, come back to it or whatever, and we'll get right back into things.
Yo, this is MCB knocked in, so I spit and rap a little. You know what it is. This shit is off the hook. You know how we do. Yeah, boy, we...
What the fuck is up with this shit, man? What the fuck? You guys ain't fucking listening to fucking Luke James, man? What the fuck? Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for B-Knock for hooking that up. He's an artist who I have reviewed. He's got some great music out there. Make sure you check it out because his flows are crazy. Also got to shout him out for doing something so creative for the little ad space there. And he does have some other ones for me to use, so you'll be hearing those. But moving on to the next question, we have Quiet Dominator who asks, who are some artists that you don't like for the music but like them as a person? And this one was kind of tough to answer because obviously I don't know all these people personally. It's hard to know how someone really is. But the answer that I would use here is Lil Yachty. Hate Lil Yachty's music. Straight up, I just think his music is awful. There might be the odd song or hook and melody that I think is alright. But I think he's just a good kid who seems to be having fun and living life to the fullest, so I appreciate him doing his thing. I might be missing something, but I can't think of any problematic things that he's really said or done, as much as, the word problematic is overused. But you guys get what I mean. Haven't been any scandals or anything off top that I can think of, unless I'm missing something obvious, but... he just seems like a good kid doing his thing, so I don't have any reason to feel any sort of way about him in regards to negativity, and I appreciate that. I just don't fuck with his music. Now, the next question comes from, interesting name here, I Love Fat Pussy 11722, so I mean, there must be a lot of people who love Fat Pussy, at least another 11,721 of them. And he asks, which rapper and producer do you want to see work with each other that has never happened yet? And I am going to take a little bit of a different approach to this answer because I'm going to say that I would just like to see DJ Quick working with more of the newer artists out there. I think he's one of the all-time greats and he just doesn't seem to pop up too much anymore. And I just think he could do really well, especially with some of these artists coming up on the West Coast, including some of the TDE roster. I'm sure he could give them some funky, groovy productions. Just seems like DJ Quick kind of keeps to himself, but he's got a lot to offer, and hopefully we get more from him. Adventures of Cody asks, what is your day job apart from YouTube? Do you think you'll ever review genres other than hip-hop? And do you have another favorite genre of hip-hop? So we'll answer those last two. I do listen to a lot of other stuff. I touched on how I like R&B. I got a soft spot for some of those cheesy 80s and 90s pop hits just because they stick in your head. And I do like some of that rock music. More so the stuff from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Not a lot of the newer stuff. I couldn't tell you too much about the newer stuff. But I like some of those groups like Blind Melon, Stone Temple Pilots, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. Just those popular groups that, most people would agree have given us some great music. So those are just a couple names I threw out there for rock. And I do review some other genres once in a while. You guys have seen me do some funk projects, some soul and R&B, and I have thought before that it would be pretty fun for me maybe to look at some classic rock projects, maybe get someone to say, this is like this heavy metal album is considered to be one of the greatest of all time. Give it a listen, and I could actually do a review. Not a reaction, but actually listen to it and break down some of the things I like and don't like. Not sure if I'd give it a rating. I might just talk about it. I mean, my time is pretty tight as it is with all these damn kids I keep making, but, you know, I always thought that would be a cool idea just to sort of expand my boundaries, check out some different shit, and do a real review. But we'll see what happens. As for my day job, apart from being a YouTuber, I'm a butcher. Been doing that for pretty much all my life, man. Learned to cut meat. I like it. It's fun. The time flies by because you're always doing something different. And it does feel pretty cool just, you know, to cut somebody a nice meal. Give them a nice T-bone steak. You know, cut them up a roast they might want or whatever the case may be. But, you know, there's not too much that I can get into that's exciting about the art of butchery. And Daniela asks me, did you read Shea Serrano's The Rap Yearbook? If so, what did you think about it? And what are some other good books about rap hip-hop? Now, my mother actually got me that book for Christmas a couple of years ago, and I loved it, man. Thought it was really cool because you're getting all kinds of humor, fun, nostalgia, and pop culture references. And as for other hip-hop books to check out, I would definitely recommend DMX's autobiography, Earl. That shit is crazy, and I know we all already know that DMX is kind of crazy himself. Like, he's been through all kinds of shit. His lifestyle is nuts. But this really gives you a look into how he became that way, how he came up in the rap game, different artists who he rubbed shoulders with, had beef with, da-da-da-da-da. Really a great book. And that's one that I would recommend, man. It's definitely worth your time checking it out. Gives you that inside look that you might not get elsewhere. And I think it's probably the same with a lot of books from other rappers, because rappers have, you know, most of them have lived some pretty interesting lives, I think. At least the ones who rap about it in their music. So, you know, I'd check some of those out too. C. Dolman 4 asked me, how do you like living in Eastern Canada, and what are the best places to visit? And as someone who is regularly on Twitter, seeing just the wild shit that goes on in the U.S., I am so thankful to be living here every day, man, for a lot of reasons. We have great health care, maternity/parental benefits, not much in the way of gun violence, and just a lot of stuff that makes plain sense. Not to mention weed just became legal, so if you're into that, which I'm not, I mean, you can just go online or go in the store and buy whatever you want, man. Big old quantities, pick the flavor, pick the color, pick the smell, pick the strength. I just think it's cool, man. Feels like we're moving forward in a lot of ways that make sense. Not going to say we're perfect. You know, some people think Canada doesn't have racism or a racist past, but there's all kinds of shit going on there, especially if you look into how Native Americans were treated and are continued to be treated. You could also look up Africville. That's a very interesting and sad story that went on here in Nova Scotia. I ain't going to give you a history lesson, but you can look up into that. You know, so I'm not trying to paint this picture that we're perfect, but there are certainly a lot of things here that I'm very proud of. I'm also proud of, you know, we're very open to refugees and immigrants, people who help make our culture even more beautiful and diverse. So, you know, I got love for Canada. Eastern Canada is pretty good, and I can't complain. And as for places to visit, just make sure you get a donaire and a poutine while you're here, maybe even a donaire poutine if you're feeling crazy. And you also want to check out the usual various museums, historical and heritage sites, all that type of stuff, because there's a lot to learn about Nova Scotia. Check out Africville, just like I said. But moving on, David Rowe 721 asks, what two seemingly different rappers do you think could actually make a great rap duo, like a Run the Jewels scenario? And you know what? After hearing Ghostface and Mick Jenkins on Pieces of a Man, one album that I think is one of the year's most underrated projects, by the way, I think they would make a great collaboration project. Ghost with his more wild, fun style, and Mick with his more smooth, poetic style. I could definitely go for more than that, because I like what they did on that song, Padded Locks. I think another great pairing would be Fonte and Zero. Between the relationships, tracks, the humor, and smooth melodies, I know they'd make something great. And if we really want to mix it up, why don't we put Freddie Gibbs with Apathy, because they have both been great this year, and I know they could make it work, man. I think that would be really dope. You know, they both work with similar production styles, a lot of that gritty sample-based shit. Apathy is hard-hitting bars. Freddie Gibbs is Gangsta Gibbs, so we know how he does. That is something that I would like to hear. Even if they did a track together, man, I think they would work really well. He also asked me, who is the most overhated rapper in the game right now? And this is kind of tough too, because I feel like most rappers who are hated or disliked are done so for a fair reason. Like, we know so much about them these days that there's always something that comes up that, you know, they're beating on their girlfriend, or look at all the shit that 6ix9ine got going on with him as far as apparently touching a kid. Now he's going to be locked up forever for some other shit that's going on. I don't know. I don't follow all that shit too closely, but you guys know what I'm getting at. Usually there's a reason that rappers are disliked, and you can understand. But sometimes I feel bad for Big Sean, man, because I've heard him kill verses before. Most of the time he doesn't, but he has it in him. And he doesn't seem to bother anybody too much, but people pile on him all the damn time, myself included. So I guess I'm guilty and I don't feel that bad. But you know what I mean. Just seems like Big Sean is always taking heat, even when he's just minding his damn business. So, you could say he's probably overhated. I ain't going to say that he's a great artist. He deserves all this respect and shit, because I think a lot of his projects are really bad. But he takes a lot of heat from a lot of people, I should say. And the last question from him is, as a fellow Canadian and sports fan, do you have any interest in hockey? And as much as I love sports, I have just never really been into hockey, man. I do follow it a bit during the playoffs and the Stanley Cup, because that's crunch time and everybody's talking about it, so I don't want to be out of the loop. But that's about it. Like, I don't have a favorite team or a favorite player or anything like that. Obviously, I live right around the corner from where Sidney Crosby's from, so people are always showing him love. I think there's another young player who's from this area, Cole Harbour or Dartmouth, somewhere in Nova Scotia. I forget, like I said, I don't know too much about hockey, but I hear people talking about that type of shit. And I did collect cards back in the day like most Canadian kids. Also got out there on skates and played on lakes and ponds, played in driveways, street hockey and shit like that. So just as a Canadian, hockey is sort of a part of your culture, whether you want it to be or not, I think. But I don't really love it or follow it. So, my interest isn't really there, other than when it's the end of the season, like I said, and shit is really moving forward. And lastly, here we are at the last question. This has been a pretty good podcast. I might have to do this again. Roll that Bud 420. This is a good one to end on. Favorite wrestling moment growing up. And look, man, I came up through the 90s and the Attitude Era, so I was lucky to witness a lot of greatness. But when Stone Cold came through to save Team WWF during those takeover days, that shit was incredible, man. He came in the parking lot, he was whooping ass all the way to the ring. Then that music hit, the crowd went nuts. You just do not get reactions like that in wrestling anymore. Once in a while, you do get some pretty big ones, but some of those pops that we were getting in the Attitude Era, whoo, man, that shit was crazy. Even the shit that WCW had going on. Even before, when we had, the Monday Night Wars going on, there was so much great stuff that was happening there. Loved all of that. Another good moment, of course, was the Stone Cold and Rock build-up for WrestleMania 17. You might remember that promo where they had the Limp Bizkit track going. That shit still gets me hyped. That was incredible. Another one is HBK retiring Ric Flair. There are just so many moments, man. Like, there's no way that I could list them all, because I was a big wrestling fan, an even bigger wrestling fan, I should say, back in the day, more so than I am now. But I still watch once in a while just because, I think once you're a wrestling fan, it's always sort of there. You're always into it a little bit in one way or the other. So there we go, man. Whew. Take a deep breath. That was a lot of questions. I appreciate you guys for sending them in. If I didn't get to your question, I apologize. I had them coming in from all angles. I was taking them all down. Some of them I actually didn't answer because I answered them during my other Q&As. So if you feel disappointed, make sure you go back and check those, because I've done 3 or 4 of them already, and you might find your answer in there. But yeah, we might do this again. If you're really disappointed that I missed your question, like I said, I'm sorry. Just nudge me. Give me a nudge and tell me again. Send it to me in the comment section, because I'm always taking questions. It wasn't just for this Q&A. I thought this would be a good time to do a full one because I hit 20K. Thank you for that. That was a nice milestone. But you can always send questions and shit in, because I can always use them on the podcast. And, these ones I was very quick answering for the most part. But in other instances where I'm doing a full show and getting into some other stuff, I might be able to make a segment if someone sends me a really good question. You know what I mean? Really break down a topic or something like that. But we are going to get out of here. I think this is a great length. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. Thank you for supporting the podcast. It is on SoundCloud now. Now that I'm off work because my second boy, my third child, is here, I got more time. So there's going to be more reviews coming, more collaborations, more podcasts. Going to get the podcast up on Spotify soon, hopefully. But now I'm just rambling, so let me wrap this shit up. Thank you all very much for helping me hit 20K. I appreciate each and every one of you. You guys have made this just so fun to do, man. I love having these discussions with you guys, whether it's these types of questions on music or whatever. God damn it, I'm fucking rambling again. Thank you. Said thank you like 20 million times, but that's how I feel. So we gonna wrap it up. And you ain't gonna see me next time, but you are gonna hear me. Thank you for listening.